No, this is Chaim.
Hey,
my very handsome co-founder. Some say the most beautiful Western out there.
It's in LinkedIn.
Okay, so we are going to talk about autokitteh. That's how we pronounce it, in a very bad pronunciation that I'm doing. Oh wow, hi. And this is an open source developers first platform for automation, and I should talk more slowly, yes. And yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, but by the way, why autokitteh? Simply because Itai is...
I love cats and I suck at names. And so I just take kitteh to everything I need. Like we need to do something like, I don't know, send email kitteh. Anyway, this is how we started. This is me and Chaim when we were younger. Guess who is who there? It started actually a long time ago when I was working at Lyft. We didn't start autokitteh, but the idea, every company that's big enough or even starting small or whatever, always has some kind of system somewhere that you need to connect it to some internal system. Oh, and by the way, it needs to do also this and also this and also this. And now you start writing a silly Python script, and then you add more stuff to it, more stuff to it, and then it becomes unmanageable hell that you need to maintain until the end of times. And nobody gets stuck with it, so everybody gets stuck with it, and that's a lot of fun. So I started it by writing some very silly stuff called review kitteh, obviously, that sent a Slack message every time someone put an eyes emoji in some PR, and it was spread virally inside Lyft. And then I decided, okay, we need to do something that makes it easier to make, because it took me a week to do this silly thing in the current system that we had. So I started thinking about how to make it more general and stuff like that. And it progressed. And then when I worked in Checker, I came to know this weird young software that's called Cadence, that later became Temporal. And I took this knowledge with me to start, actually, it gave me the perfect infrastructure to start autokitteh on, because it allows you essentially to do durable workflows in a way that is very, let's say, I wouldn't say the easiest way to make, because everyone knows it's a hell of an abstraction, amazing abstraction, but still there's a lot of work and operations you need to be done. You need to start workers, you need to write code in usually low-level language like Go or JavaScript, so I call it low-level, handle activity options, stuff like that. And again, this is an amazing platform, and we love it, not like just because Max is a very good guy, but this is a really, really amazing platform, and I think they found the right abstractions, how to actually write durable systems, which is an activity and a workflow. And I bet everybody knows what's an activity and a workflow. Oh, should they talk about it a little bit or not?
It's up to them, but...
They all look very smart.
Yeah, I think we're okay.
And then, yeah, and that's what I based AutoKey on, because it just gives you everything to write distributed systems. But we want to make it even better and even easier to write distributed systems by augmenting the use of Temporal and actually abstracting even Temporal in a much more higher level abstraction.
Yeah, so what is autokitteh? Autokitteh basically is a server. It's very easy to install. It's an executable. You can run it on your PC or your laptop. Will show it here, or in the cloud, which it will be a cloud service. And it runs workflows. Eventually, they're durable workflows. And what we provide the developer is a way to write code in currently in Starlark. We'll have, very shortly we will have Python as well. So you as a developer, you just write code, okay? And anything you have that has an interaction with the world, like sending chat message in Slack or doing an HTTP request or anything like this, will be transferred to an activity. So actually, you write code. The code is transferred to a workflow, and in the workflow, there are activities. You as a user, you don't know about it at all, it's just out of the box. You configure the system. We provide all kinds of other nice tools, like a simple way to connect to Slack, for instance, or GitHub. You have to take care of authentication and all stuff like this. So it's part of what we do. You just deploy it, and then you have a managed system that runs for you workflows. You can see the outcome of it, if they are errored or they worked well. You have statistics, you have everything managed, and you can do actions on them, like stop them and renew, stuff like this. The platform itself, it runs so the user deploys it to the server. Okay, just a click of a button, we'll show you in a second. And under the hood, it runs over Temporal, the workflows. It interacts under the hood with external systems. So it covers all the activities over here. You don't know about it. It manages the workflows. And of course, Temporal provides all the cool stuff of
by abstracting it, by having it at a slightly higher level than Temporal, what we get is actually a lot of bonuses. For instance, you don't need to actually build your own workers. You just upload some code to the cloud. In this case, in Startup, which is I would say dialect of Python. It's essentially the same like Python 2.7 with some improvements. And we will support also Python TypeScript in the not so far future. And then once you put in the cloud, you deploy it, boom, which is like takes 0 time to deploy it, which is amazing because it lets you iterate over it very quickly. Like, oh, you have a problem, you debug it, okay, let's deploy a new version, it's just out there instantly. And then you could also, once you run the program, you can actually see a detailed log of everything that happened without writing even a single log line, because we know exactly what parameters in a higher level than what Temporal know, we passed to third-party systems and got back. So you can see every call to an outside system completely logged, like when it started, when it finished, and how much, and what are the input and output that it had.
Yeah, and this is called for debugging.
Any questions so far?
Okay.
Okay, so this is the basic architecture of autokitteh. Essentially, you know, let me deal with the pointer, with the cat toy, which is awesome. So we have Temporal down there. You could also use Temporal. This whole thing actually can run anywhere from a Raspberry Pi to 100 instances on AWS. So it's very composable plug-in system, which is quite kind of awesome. So you have the Temporal server, you have the Temporal workers that we actually write the code for the Temporal workers. It's our service that we deploy, and we have our own backend and the workflow that we maintain and activity. But the workflow itself, what it does is essentially what the runtime is telling you to do. So let's say you write some code in Startup, and let's say it defines some kind of function. This function is exactly what the workflow is going to do, and I'll show it very, very, very quickly. And every call to an outside system or an action or whatever outside the workflow is being automatically translated into an activity, which gives you everything. So this is an API per system. We actually have a pretty nifty CLI. We've written a VS Code extension that we're working heavily on, which makes it much easier to deal with. And that's essentially it. Yeah. Hi?
Yeah, so actually we took it to the extreme. We wrote a demo 2 minutes ago, actually 2 minutes ago before the meeting. We'll see if it works. Seriously. Yeah. Just to prove our point. So the demo is pretty simple. Like we do a workflow that we call it deploy sentry.
Yeah, so deploy sentry is something that actually existed in Lyft in a much more complicated version of this. And actually Ryan Cox is the one who made that. So sorry Ryan, I stole your name. So it does exactly what we worked on about, I think, a month working. I actually implemented it today. And and we'll show you what it does. Essentially, Han, do you want to describe it after I killed Ryan?
Yeah, so you deploy it from Slack, okay? Just command Slack, right? You deploy it and it will call a gRPC command to some deployment service. Okay, and then it will set a ratio for kind of when you upload a website or whenever you...
So whenever you deploy something, you want to first run it in Canary, usually. And the Canary, you want Canary to see that if something explodes, the blast radius will be actually pretty minimal. So what he does, he deploys it to the whatever environment you want, and then it waits let's say, for a few seconds. Here it's a few seconds. In real life, it should be much more, and there are a lot of interesting use cases there. And it waits. And if there are no errors, okay, let's continue raise it another 10%, and another 10%, another 10%. If something screws up in the middle, suddenly you've got an error rate that is larger than what you want, okay, you abort, unroll, everything, yeah, everything is fine, crisis averted, and then you can start all over. Here, what will show you that from Slack, very easily you can say, hey, I want to deploy this service, and this version, it will show you that you get the report in Slack. You don't need to deal with very nasty systems that begin with J, and then it will handle the deployment for you. And yeah, let's show them. Okay. Do you want to see?
Yeah.
But I can go home. No. Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. Yeah. So this is the code. You see, this is about 64 lines of code that. Not very, I didn't write it very succinctly. It's too small, yes. We are all, and this is too small. Is that better? You in the back, can you see it well? Oh, they're young people. Oh, it's not so good. Okay. Now? Awesome, yeah. Awesome. So ignore the loads, it's essentially imports. So what happens is the workflow, the temporal workflow begins here. And it begins when you do a Slack mention for the app that we install on Slack. It's called autokitteh. And essentially when it says, someone says deploy, and then say the service that they want to deploy, and the version they want to deploy, it actually begins. So what it does, it's called this internal function, it's called deploy. Oh, it can jump there. Oh, it jumps even there. And you can see that what it does two things. One of them is actually called Slack and saying, hey, Mr. User or Miss User or whatever user, I want to deploy this, I got your message that you want to deploy this service or this version. And then it does something cool. It calls to gRPC, to a service that we call deploy sentry, that I just wrote it today in about an hour in Go. And that just manages the system, like, okay, what do you want to deploy, and also gathers errors and stuff like that. But it's completely stateless. It does only that. What we do, we add a state layer on top of it and manage it like in a durable way that I'll show you later. Now, what's cool about this? That everything until now was working as a workflow. There are no activities done so far. But when we call Slack chatbot message and gRPC call, it's run as an activity, which is pretty cool because I don't see any word that say activity, local activity options, .get, execute local workflow, whatever, right? It's just plain straightforward code that's meant for human consumption. I mean, regular human consumption, not everybody is Temporal. So what we do later is we actually, then after we deploy, we actually iterate by increments from 0 to 100 on percentage. And this is another example that I did especially HTTP to show you that it's awesome, that we can actually reach the deploy center service and ask him, hey, how is our service doing? And essentially what it returns the error rate. And we report it to the user. If it's about some arbitrary that they set it in a constant error rate, it will just report and set the rate to 0. Okay? If not, we'll increase the rate and then we'll sleep. And everybody who ever built a distributed systems know when you're doing a sleep, you get fired. And why is that? It's because, unless you're junior and then it's being taught, that's not nice doing sleep. Because if the system crashes or anything, you pick up from the beginning. Also, we need to handle various events that can happen versus sleep. It's a big no-no in event-driven systems. But with Temporal, thanks Maxim and somehow, this is actually very, very easy to do so. Because if you do the sleep and the workflow not crashes, it will just continue from the same point in time. We'll do the replay, and the power replay, and all the stuff, and we'll just continue from the same point exactly. Which is awesome, because now you can do long-running stuff very simply, also with autokitteh. And after it's done, it sets the version to 100, and say deployment complete, you can go home, and then it's Friday, then, yeah, it's not fun. And yeah, we can write out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's get
Okay, so let's pray for the demo god.
show the extension.
The extension. Oh, the extension I'll show you in a moment. So you see this cute cat here? My wife designed the logo, by the way. She's very talented. And so you see we actually started a project called Deploy Sentry, and it lets you build and deploy. We are going to deploy. It's going to take a lot of time, and it's done. So the deployment is just actually in our system, just one database. This is ready because everything is ready by the time you want to deploy. It takes 0 time. So if you want to make a new version, you go change the code a little. I can even show you. Sorry for extending and taking some time, but it's really awesome. So let's say we say error, we say deploy complete, yay, okay? And we go here and we want to deploy a new version, and we do deploy, and boom, we have a new version. We can show you after that we can do training and manager deploys, but we're taking too much time from our next people. Well, it's very nice. And yeah, so it's currently ready. Let's see if we have our deploy sentry service, very complicated service is running. And let's go now to Slack and say, hey, autokitteh, Itai is autokitteh instance, but actually it's autokitteh. Deploy SVC1 version 1. Okay? Okay, so I do that, and the daemon community allows us. And you can see it actually doing the stuff. And it's actually calling the service too, but this is currently more important. So you see it every few seconds. In real life, I guess it will be different. It actually increased the percentage of the new version instances in the cluster, let's say that way. And you see when you go to 100, you will even hopefully say 100 and yay. So this is the new version. Now we've got the class. And now we are going to deploy a new version. And we'll deploy SVC1, and we'll deploy because I'm not so nice, I will deploy a version that I know is known to be bad, and let's see what happens, okay? So, okay, we have 0% zero error rate, 10% zero error rate. Oh no, we start getting errors, and which is not good. So let's see what this is. Okay, error rate too high. When it pass 5, this is the limit they set, and boom, it's a direction set is to 0. So yeah, that's it. Another plan? Anyway, now we close for maximum somehow. Logs. So yeah. So let me show you. Let me stop this. You know what? No. You can actually, I show you this from the CLI because everything like here is in the middle. You can just AK simple command. I can show it will be long, but it will be nice. I'm doing this like that. Yes. What? Sessions. Yeah. So you see that we started the workflow. Sorry that it's a bit JSON-y, but we're all smart, as we said. So yeah, the workflow was created, then we're just calling, the function was called, and then we got, where is it? It doesn't matter. We got SVC1 v3, right? And then we called the chat post message on Slack, right? And we pass it all these fancy parameters, and we know what it returned. And it returned a post message response. And we can see exactly what happened. I won't walk you through all the internal stuff here. It's going to be much nicer. And at the end, let's say every time it called, let's say, set ratio. I think that's not the name of the function. You see, setting ratio. That's for post message. I want to show you what it did to the gRPC. Oh, there you go. It's called the gRPC call. And it's called set ratio, and it gives it the new, it's called 0 here, that's why it's over that way. And yeah, you can see everything that happens. Thank you. Join our Discord, we're cool guys, we have a Discord, not just Slack. It's very fancy, it's now very hip today. You can also go to autokitteh.com, you'll have a link there also to the Discord and also to GitHub, which will appreciate you coming and looking around and flaming our code and stuff like that.
By the way, there are many other features under the hood, like managing and deleting sessions and all of this, but also there's an issue of what happens when you switch a version, right? Which is also always a problem. You want to explain?
Yeah, I can even show it. So let's say we're running something here and we'll run it. Let's do it again, right? Deploy, SVC1, V0 is running. And I want to make another change here and I want to do it, remove this, right? I will show it. If you go in, you see it's running, but when I do deploy, that's automatically changed to training because there's still a running session here. And if you're going to run a new session, it's going to actually do it in the new deployment. We can also, we are working, we have it using the CLI, not the UI yet, with a bit, less sexy to show that way. That we can actually make a test deployment, which only gets stuff that we intentionally want to send them via the UI, like I want to take this event and send it to you and see how you react to it. We're going to be very soon have a very extensive testing capabilities, including unit tests for the scripts you write in a very easy manner, and also like golden inputs and stuff like that you can run through. We also have integration for AWS, Slack, GitHub, Google, all the APIs, which is awesome, and it should be also not very hard to write your own integration yourself to connect it to various stuff. Essentially though, if you have HTTP and gRPC, you should be covered and do everything even without writing a first-class integration.
The last thing I would like to mention is that this is by no means a replacement for Temporal. Temporal is great for its stuff. We're just adding a layer for use cases such as DevOps or testing or places where you don't need high capacity, too much high capacity, because this is not about running a lot of stuff. But in many cases, when you need to run something occasionally, but the workflow is complicated, building it becomes really easy, but you get the same value. So it can go to use cases of DevOps, of all kinds of use cases, but DevOps are the first ones that we feel that this is the right spot to start with, but also development management using Slack and GitHub and all
this by no means is a replacement for Temporal. This is just a layer above it. Yeah. You need to think about if you wanted to write this logic that I wrote in 10 minutes today, seriously. Writing the Go service, the silly Go service took me about 3 times the time. If you wanted to write this in Temporal, how much time do you spend on it? What do you need to get into doing to get in production? Deploy the workers and service and stuff like that. Using this, it cuts your time radically. I will venture even to say that if you probably want to do 80% of your schedule, you'd rather do it in a higher level language than in a Go or I don't know what. But yeah, that's it. Any questions? Nobody else?
I think we'll open up to the audience for questions. I always, kick things off. So what were some of the lessons learned, like building this layer of abstraction on top of Temporal? What are some things, if there's folks in the audience who are trying to do something similar, what advice would you give them?
First of all, really understand really well error handling. Because Temporal has its own rituals and it's awesome, and we are going to use it mostly for infrastructure stuff. But you need to understand when you should retry stuff and you shouldn't retry stuff. You should also learn to understand very well what should be done in activity and what be done in workflow. It's not very clear from the get-go. And Temporal essentially brings a new, I think, paradigm. I don't really like the word paradigm, but how to build a distributed system, which I think they nailed down the right abstraction of workflow activity. But I think that using it currently in a low-level language is a bit challenging. It's very rewarding once you get the escape learner code. But I think, that's it. Mostly the lesson learned is know your errors really well, know what can be done and not can be done using activity and workflow, know the difference between local activity and activity. Understand the limit of tasks that the Temporal deals with. That's all.
What sort of questions do we have from the audience?
No. Like in the example you showed, if something blew up within that workflow, how would autokitteh like
Can you
recover?
define blew up?
Like if there was an error like within the workflow?
So there are that's why I said earlier about errors.
Yeah.
So you really need to understand, and we are doing most of the jobs here, what is an infrastructure failure and what is a user failure. Infrastructure failure or database craps up, I don't know, right? That's something that we will handle and will never surface to you. If we surface to you, it used to be angry at us, right? But if let's say the Slack is down, right? You need you will get the error from that, and you need to handle it in the workflow unless you use our higher level retry facilities. So that's something that is super important, distinguishing between error types. But we make it easier. We just give you the user errors. You will not suffer infrastructure errors. And if there are infrastructure errors, you know who to complain to, which is fine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So just for like contextualizing where you're injecting into Temporal, where do you decide like what part of the code is an activity?
So
is it one big activity, small activity? Like where are you deciding that?
great question. So every access of something that takes more than 0 time or accesses a third-party system is actually an activity. Whenever to read you something that might fail is an activity. Maybe that's not a great definition, but essentially where something is just not just CPU.
So
Right.
is like the HTTP library you were using
It's an activity.
is it your HTTP library that's like wrapping it?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That's where I
So
was-
whenever you use an integration, we call to actually as an activity.
Makes sense.
Sometimes it's not really an activity, like the sleep that we do. It's not really an activity, it's actually we're using the Temporal workflow sleep, if you know a little bit more. Why is that? Because then it tracks using hard bets exactly when the sleep you fail and stuff like that. So that's a lot of knowledge that we cover for you.
Yeah, so anything to where you send the code, like accessing Slack or gRPC, HTTP, all of those are activities.
Makes sense.
Any more questions? Yeah.
Would you recommend this tool for a team that's very new to Temporal?
Obviously, yeah, absolutely. I would even say,
Depends on which use cases. I mean,
Yeah.
if you need high capacity of throughput, and not necessarily. But if it's workflows that run not in the very high capacity, yes, because eventually somebody has to run them.
yeah, I'd like to qualify the high capacity. And I don't mean that this is like 10 times more or less usage friendly or less efficient than Temporal. I would say it's like, it has the 90% efficiency in Temporal. That we're talking really like stuff that border real time. That's when you won't be able to use autokitteh. But you could, we need to work on that. We need to qualify that better. But essentially, there's nothing there that does a lot of stuff other than the interpreter of Startup or Python in the future. Also, I think that most of the people that want to use Temporal don't need that level of low level. Don't need to go that low level. I think 80% of them more could use something like that. And this is can actually take Temporal and bring it to everybody, and not just very smart people like people who are in the room. So yeah, I suck up to the customers. So yeah, mental note.
Any questions?
You can begin with autokitteh and then go deeper into Temporal if you need. That's your escape hatch. The autokitteh can actually itself can start Temporal workflows in other pure Temporal stuff and stuff like that. And that's the last point I wanted.
Perfect. Good place to end. Thank you, Itai and Hai.
Thank you.